So what do we do for closed passage? We skim the passage, understand the meaning, and then we're going to look at options. The same strategies that we applied for fill in the blanks is what we will apply for this as well, right? We look for collocations, we look for context clues, we look for if the meaning is positive or negative, blah blah blah. Looking at the central theme or main idea of the passage, we will choose associated words. And remember, there will always be a clue for the blank 1 in blank 4 or next to blank 4 or next to blank 5. So context. Let's read. Foreign trade in general terms can be defined as a trade among dash countries. It refers to the exchange of goods and dash between one country and another. It is also known as international trade. Since India was a British colony, the dash of its foreign trade before 1947 was typically colonial. It served as a supplier of dash and raw materials to the industrial nations, particularly England, and as an importer of manufactured goods. The dash of exports was high and imports took the back seat. So what is the central theme or context? I'm going to project the screen again. For those of you who did not take the test, please go through and tell me what is the central idea of the passage. Main, if you have to give a title for this passage, what will it be? Trade, export and import. Yeah, trading, right? It's not about foreign trading. It's about, foreign trade in general terms, agreed, that's what they're discussing about. But if I have to like zero in on one word, I'll say trade. That involves import, export, obviously. That's all part of the trading, which is the larger context. So, and if I look at option 1, right, so obviously we'll have to look for associated terms, right? And if I look at my option 1, I already have a couple of you telling me option B, and 1 or 2 of you even said option A. Okay, so let's look at it. So, foreign trade in general terms can be defined as a trade among dash countries. My options are poor, different, rich, similar, western. Just apply pure logic and you tell me what can be the answer, right? I can't believe I'm having different answers for this blank. In fact, except C, I have all the answers. Somebody said A, somebody said B, somebody said D, somebody said E also. I want you to look at trading in general, right? And say which will be the most effective option. Can I? And it is addressing a particular country as well, right? Just because it says foreign trade, I can't exclusively say it's only Western countries, right? Then is India a Western country? Look at the context. What does the context say? I have to eliminate option E, right? I can't exclusively say foreign trade will happen only between or among Western countries. No. Do you think India is a Western country? And what does it mean by similar countries? Similar in what? First of all, countries are not similar, right? Everything about each country is different. Our internal affairs, in fact, within India, the states itself, our internal affairs is different, right? So, cannot be option D. Does it happen only among rich countries? No. What about the poor countries? They also make some sort of trade, right? Because something is growing in their country as well. They also have to make money. So I can't exclusively say either poor or rich countries, right? The only logical answer has to be option B, different countries, right? So it cannot be poor or rich. It's not about whether if the country is poor, they will do trade. No, that just doesn't make sense. So whoever said option A, absolutely incorrect, right? Just think about it. If trading is happening, which means you have the means to do that, that itself makes you, disqualifies you being poor, right? If you're poor, you really can't afford to trade. And trading is not exclusive to rich countries. Yeah, exactly. So it's not about poor or rich. And it very specifically says the first line, in general terms, can be defined as a trade among different countries, right? That makes absolute sense. Let's move on to the second blank. It refers to the exchange of goods and dash between one country and another. My options for blank 2 is services, items, materials, supply, objects. Here blank 2 only needs a collocation. What is a collocation? The associated word. What is the associated word? Goods and services. That's it, period. We are exchanging not only products, we are also exchanging services. That's what it is. Materials, are inclusive. When you say goods, it takes care of, it's the same meaning as materials and supply and objects and items. So it has to be something different than that, right? If you notice, you can't get confused with blank 2. Somebody said option B. Somebody is saying items. No, right? If you actually look at the options, items, materials, supply, objects, all 4 can fall under the category of goods. So the only option that is left is services, and in fact goods and services is a collocation. Henna. So it has to be option A. Let's move on. Blank 3. It is also known as international trade. Okay, great. Since India was a British colony, the dash of its foreign trade before 1947 was typically colonial. Right? So they're describing something about India's trade. Right? So, and if I look at my context, my options are style, pattern, formula, form and working. The dash of its trade. So obviously I need a noun form here. Right? So what will I quickly eliminate? I will eliminate option E. It's not a noun form. I have to choose between style, pattern, formula and form. All 4 are noun forms. But in the context, it's saying the dash of its foreign trade before 1947 was typically colonial. What's the meaning of colonial? Let's try and understand the context, right? Colonial means what? That might point us in the right direction towards selecting the right answer option. So colonial here was typically colonial, meaning, are you guys giving me the answer? Form or pattern? I'm still waiting for answer for colonial. Nearby, limited to some countries, temporary together, limited. Okay, with some boundaries, limitation, yes, obviously, right? Our clue word is before 1947, which means we're talking about before independence, right? So before independence, we were under the rule of the British. Right? That's what it is called, the colonial rule. So in the context, right? So what word can I bring in here? We're not talking about style, we're not talking about some formula, and necessarily not even the form. The most effective word can be pattern, right? What is the meaning of pattern in the context? I'm going to project the context again. When I say pattern, what comes to your mind? Structure, yes. So we are talking about how something is done. The pattern means the process, right? The process in which something is done or something is taken care of, or the procedure basically, right? Patterns have different meanings, but here we are talking about the way in which something is done, right? So we are not talking about a particular code or a specific formula. No. That's why option C is incorrect. We're not even talking about the shape, form, matlab shape, right? We're not talking about that. We're not talking about the style in which, I don't think we had a choice there, right? It has to be pattern. Since India was a British colony, it's specified there, the pattern of its foreign trade, as in the procedure or the manner in which the trade happened, the way in which something took place before 1947 was typically colonial, right? Pattern is our answer. So they're saying something that, yes, when I say pattern, which also means something that happened regularly. So before 1947, this was the case. Because it was a British colony, because we were under that rule, right? The pattern of how the trade happened in India was colonial. Moving on, it served as a supplier of dash and raw materials. Options: foodstuffs, arms, nuclear energy, aircraft and coal. Here you have a hint word, you have the hint word and synonym hint word, and then I have raw materials. So what can I choose for blank 4? You tell me. Which means I have to choose an option which brings in the same meaning as raw materials. Which option does that for me? Most of you have come back and said A. Anybody has anything different? Do you agree? Do you disagree? Do you have a different answer? Coal. Okay. C, nuclear energy. So most of you have come back and said, E, arms. So basically you've given me all the options except aircraft. I have A, B, C and E, right? Arms means, in the context, what can it mean? Somebody asked, arms matlab? Here arms means you're talking about military ammunition, right? Weapons. See, remember, we're talking about a period before independence. Okay. So, what were we rich in at that time? What were we known for? Apply a little bit of general knowledge also. In the context, we definitely did not have the power of weapons or nuclear energy, aircraft. Coal, I don't know. It's very limited in terms of trade, right? I wouldn't have been a supplier only for that. What India is known for is agriculture, right? So if that is the case, the obvious thing has to be foodstuffs, no? Look at the context. That's also a good point. Because coal kind of is covered under the raw material. Why not E? Because raw materials kind of covers that bit. Why would I segregate one of the raw materials and put it before in the previous blank? I would rather talk about what else was India supplying, right, other than the raw materials. I don't think India was a supplier of weapons before independence. It has to be A, boss. That's why I said just apply a little bit of general knowledge as well to the industrial nations, particularly England, and as an importer of manufactured goods, right? We had a lot of skilled laborers. Now, the last context, because none of the other options makes logical sense. Even if I have to choose any of the other options, is it mentioned anywhere in the context? It's not about each one of these can be supplied. We're talking about what did India supply, right? We're not looking at the options and saying, oh, can arms be supplied? Yes. Can nuclear energy be supplied? Can aircraft be supplied? Can coal be supplied? That's a different answer. In the context, we are referring specifically to what India served as a supplier. How did India serve as a supplier? Option 5. The dash of exports was high and imports took the back seat. Options: quality, rate, cost, income, volume. Your clue word is high. The dash of exports is high and imports took the back seat. The what? So in terms of import and export, I hope you understand that meaning, right? Export, out, going out from the country. Import, coming in. So they're saying the dash of exports was high and imports took the back seat. So is it quality? Is it a rate? Is it cost? Is it income? Or is it volume? What can be the most logical one? Though we have a lot of collocations, right? I can say the cost is high, or the rate is high, or the income is high, but we're not talking about collocations. We're talking about the context and trying to figure out what are they trying to say. Imports took a back seat. Why that happened? What could have been a possibility? Why were we not getting more? Because we were under the rule of the British, right? And most of them were trying to exploit the resources that we had. So obviously things were going out in larger number towards the other countries, right? Towards industrial nations. So what can be the answer? Please understand, we didn't afford to, we were not under the, we did not have the freedom to sell our stuff at a high price. We are still talking about under their rule, under the British rule, which means we were exploited, our resources were exploited. So in terms of rate and cost and income is, not applicable here in the context, which means it has to be so much bulk went out of our country, right? We got exploited, most of the resources were, it has to be volume, not quality. Because the quality was high, the volume shot up, right? Because of the good quality, the volume shot up. And that's why import took the back seat. We didn't receive much, we gave much. Are you guys following? Yeah. So here we're talking about just the sheer size of the resources that went out of the country. Okay. The thing is, what I'm trying to say is, I would agree that you can get confused with the options because you're looking at collocations, you seem everything is applicable, but you'll also have to fall back on the context, rely on the context, understand the setting, in which era it's happening, what are they talking about. We're talking about, we're still under the rule of the British, our pattern of the trade is colonial, which means we did not have a lot of freedom to do what we wanted to do at that time, right? We were getting exploited, right? So you'll have to keep that in mind. That's why context is important.